Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. His name is Tyler Merren. Hey, Tyler, how are you?
I'm great, Cesar. Thanks for having me on with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to have you here today. And just to give a little bit of a background of you to the listeners. So Tyler Merren is a three-time Paralympic athlete, motivational speaker, personal trainer, and owner of Revision Training LLC. He was born in Michigan with an eye condition known as retinitis pigmentosa. I didn't say it right. You can quote me on that. What is that again?
Retinitis pigmentosa. It's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah, there you go. Despite his visual challenges, grew up with a love for sports and activities, which transferred into his career path as a personal trainer and elite athlete. His wife, Leanne, who is also blind, and he have 4 children and currently live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where Tyler's owning his business, training for the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games and being the best husband and father he can be. Wow, that's super amazing, and definitely want to tap into that. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. I know definitely that was interesting and led to a very challenging life, yet very fulfilling life. So tell me more about your background or your whole story.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, I was born in Southwest Michigan, and I grew up on a farm. So very, very rural area. Not a whole lot of what would I say? Like a lot of extra support for somebody with a disability, right? So not that I came from an area where they didn't care or anything. There just weren't a ton of resources, right? Grew up in a very rural place. But, you know, despite the fact that my parents noticed something very different about me, right? When I was a kid, when I would try to look at somebody, I couldn't look at them directly. My eyes would always kind of shift to the side. Or when we would go outside late at night, my vision would drop off like that. And so part of retinitis pigmentosa, you deal with night blindness. I always had trouble tracking a ball, right? Because I have tunnel vision. And so think about like looking at life through a straw. That's kind of what my vision was like. So when you're trying to watch a ball flying through the air or a bird flying or anything like that, you lose it really quickly because you can't follow its movements. But, you know, despite all of that, grew up in a really active environment. We were always climbing trees. We were always riding bikes and playing some kind of ball sport as much as we could with the neighbor kids. And despite those challenges, I just, you know, it was either sit at home or go out and do something, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I chose to do. I wanted to be active, and we figured out different ways to do it. We figured out, you know, I would do a lot better with the big Nerf bat and the beach ball as opposed to a regular bat and a baseball, right? So we adapted, and there were definitely things that were extra challenging with, you know, just understanding the progression of my vision as well.
Yep.
You know, so my vision was better when I was younger. I could read like regular print books, but as I get older, it digresses. So it was my early teen years when I started not being able to read regular print books anymore. You know, I was always a really good student, but it started to get to the point where I couldn't read my textbooks and I had to sit closer and closer to the board. So that's when I really started to get services to try to help, navigate it. I started learning how to use a cane. I started learning how to read Braille. I had a couple of teachers that would come in and help me with that a few times a week. And that's where I became introduced to adaptive sports. And one of those sports that I picked up on, I really, really enjoyed, was the sport of goalball, and started playing that and traveling all over the world, competing in that sport for many, many, many years, still doing that. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of my background.
No, that's awesome. And one thing that comes to mind, and obviously, going through this, and that has been your biggest challenge, is being visually impaired. How did that, during the time where you kind of saw the fact that you were definitely losing your sight and you're becoming blind, how did that compute in your head? Because I think that a lot of people might be, whether they're going through something similar or going through challenges where, you have all these ideas and thoughts playing in your head. Sometimes that can be very challenging. How did you deal with that yourself?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. So like, you're facing this challenge and you're thinking, what in the world? Why me? What do I do with this? And I guess I've always been kind of a pragmatic guy, right? Like, so I have options in front of me. So yes, I have this challenge. I have this visual impairment. I had to wrestle with this, and it always shows up, right? There's always things that come along with being visually impaired that are challenging in life. But you kind of have two options, right? You can boil it down to two things. You can sit down and mope about it, or you can get up and do something, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what it came down to. So often it was like, yeah, this visual impairment is really challenging, but I really like running. So I'm going to join the track team and try to figure it out, because otherwise I don't, and then I don't have any fun with it, So you just have to face the fact that I've been dealt these cards, but you can either fold or play your hand, and folding is typically no fun. You just, life is too exciting to just sit back and let it coast by, So that was always my mentality and the way that I tried to tackle things. I might fail. It might be a lot of work. It might be super challenging, but I'm going to give it a shot, and I found that even despite those challenges, whatever challenge you might be facing, digging your heels in and getting down in the dirt and making it happen, more often than not, you'll find yourself being successful despite those challenges.
Yeah. No, that's actually some golden nuggets there. We often play the card of being the victim, right? In many different aspects. And so, and I know it's not so easy to get out of that. And sometimes, unfortunately, the challenges that are playing in our heads, we have anywhere between 60 to 70,000 thoughts. 90% of them are negative, 85% of them are repetitive. There's a lot of garbage that's going on in your head. And I know that sometimes you can lose it. You can lose yourself to many different things. And as a matter of fact, just recently, one of my friends ended up taking his life for the same reason. He felt that depression, felt lonely, felt like he wasn't, fit in for that. And definitely it can be very challenging. And I love the idea of the thought and the message is that you definitely do have an option. And instead of playing the victim role, how about you kind of create something out of that, whatever that might be, whatever that challenge might be. And you definitely did that, right? You definitely were able to step out of that and create something. So tell me more about the finding that passion, the love, the idea of, I want to be now into this Olympics and this games, because that has helped you in many different aspects, and you've competed and you're getting ready for 2020 Tokyo.
Yeah, sports has been a huge impact in my life. And that's, touching on something that you mentioned, right? Like the negative thoughts that can build up and the things that can be in our head. And it takes a strong mind to break that cycle. And a lot of times it takes that outside help. So for me, I was very, very fortunate that I had people step into my life at the right times and do some really cool stuff in my life. Guys who were visually impaired, who were kind of mentors of mine, who were like, you know what, you're visually impaired, get over it. Let's go play some ball. Like sometimes you just need that kick in the pants, right? To get yourself moving. And like I said before, like I've always been really active, and I found this sport of goalball, which, you know, goalball is a pretty old sport. It's actually 75 years old. It was invented in Germany after World War II to give blinded war veterans a form of recreation. And it grew and developed into this big international sport for blind athletes. And it's just such a blessing for me, because like I said, my vision gets worse and worse as I get older, but the sport of goalball, it doesn't matter. Everybody plays blindfolded. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so I could continue to be successful in that. And I think that success kind of breeds success, right? Mm-hmm. So you see like yourself being successful in little things that can grow into big things, or vice versa. So when I'm seeing success in this, I'm building that confidence. I'm able to then go and say, you know what, I can do this. I can do other things. You know, it's a lot easier to sit through an intense job interview when you've been staring down the barrel of a you know, gold medal match at the Paralympic Games, right? The pressure doesn't seem as high for those other life situations when you've had those opportunities. So it's really made a big impact in my life. It's been a great opportunity.
Yeah. One thing that you touched on that I think is so critical to understand, and maybe you can give me more on that, is building your confidence. And it comes down to a lot of things that we do in life really comes down to that confidence, the commitment, the level that we have, how we feel about the things that we're doing. Oftentimes we tend to really put ourselves down, or even say, you know, I'm not good enough to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And that comes down from a confidence level, right? And I think you definitely can bring a very unique message to that, because you have, as you mentioned, you've gone through so many different challenges, yet you didn't let that stop you. Your confidence was at a very high level to be able to say, you know what, I can play this game, I can do this, I can do that. How do you think people can start creating and or building more of that confidence to really help them step up their game?
You know, it's interesting that you bring this up, because confidence is not something I've always had. And even to this day, it's something that I have to continue to groom and cultivate in myself. When I first started playing sports, long time ago, when I 2001, 2002, started playing the sport of goalball for the USA team around this time. Our team had gone through some transitions. We had a new coach, and we had a kind of a new philosophy, players being shifted around. And I was talking with our coach, and I said, well, at a previous tournament, I had played in this kind of main center position, and we were trying to set up the correct alignment. And I said, so do you want me to give this a shot? He said, sure, jump in. And so I did, and, you know, played some scrimmages, and I came out and I was like, you know, hey, yeah, I did okay. I kind of gave up some goals here. I made some mistakes here. And he looked at me and he said, you know what your problem is? You've got a lot of skill, but you just don't have enough confidence in yourself. You don't trust yourself enough. And I think so often we are that way. We're so critical of ourselves when we need to be a lot kinder to ourselves. So I think that when we talk about like building up confidence in ourselves, there's two avenues that I try to point people down. The first is you need to be kinder to yourself, right? So, you know, we're always so hypercritical of who we are and what we are. Be a little bit nicer to yourself, and pat yourself on the back for the things that you've been able to do, the good things that you've been able to accomplish. And then I think the other layer to it, the other direction is we're so afraid to fail. You know, we look at failure as like this big, like, oh my gosh, I didn't succeed. I didn't win. I didn't get the gold medal. I totally flopped. You know, you can't have an opportunity for success without the opportunity for failure. They go hand in hand. If you don't have any opportunity for failure, then you're not actually in a position to be successful either. You know, so I think of like Thomas Edison, right, who declared that he was going to improve the light bulb, right? He didn't actually invent the light bulb, but what we use today commonly considered like the design and all that stuff, that's what he came up with. he tried over 6,000 different designs and materials, and he's famously quoted to have said, I didn't fail 1,000 times to create a light bulb. I just figured out 999 ways how not to create a light bulb, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have to be kind to ourselves, and we have to understand that there will be failure, but falling isn't failure. Failure is falling and not getting back up. Right? And that's the way I think that you build up confidence in yourself as you go. Recognize that you will fail sometimes, but you be the tortoise. You just keep on plodding forward.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that, and never seen that way. And I like the way you put it. You cannot have the opportunity for success without the opportunity of failure, and that's so true. I definitely love that. Definitely, you've done a lot of things, in terms of your journey, and you've created a lot of that stuff. What have been some of your biggest lessons that you've learned throughout your journey, and not only the lessons, the application to be able to get to where you are now?
Yeah. So when I do my motivational speeches, there's typically 5 key points that I talk to. The speech that I deliver is I call it seeing the champion within, right? And there's kind of 5 levels of things that I learned along the way, different key points that you can apply that help kind of draw that success out of you, that confidence and that ability to bull forward. The first one is, like I just mentioned, you have to look beyond fear, right? You have to make sure that fear isn't holding you in place and preventing you from reaching that full potential. You will fail at things. That's just inevitable. It's part of life. Fear and failure and success are married together. But the more consistently you try, the more you push forward, the more you will find those successes. The next step that I typically talk about is assuming full ownership. You said it really well, Cesar, that people sometimes have a tendency to play that victim card. And I try to be really empathetic and sympathetic to that, because people do come from really challenging situations, and it can be so hard to break out of that. But in the end, it's your choice. You have autonomy. You have the choice to be an owner of your situation. I couldn't change whether or not I was visually impaired, but I had plenty of choice as to what I was going to do with that, and to assume full ownership of that and say, I am going to be this. I'm going to do this despite the challenge. That's on you. You have to wrestle with that, right? Believing that it's possible is the next step, deciding that you can do something. Henry Ford, this is one of my favorite quotes. He was quoted to have said, like, if you think you can do a thing, or you think you cannot, you're correct, right? It's all up here. It's in your head. If you assume that you're not capable of something, well, then you're not, right? You're not going to be able to accomplish it. People don't just wander into success, right? Guys who win the Super Bowl, they don't stand around going, how in the world did I get here?
Right.
It was a plan. It was a deliberate belief in what they were able to do in a direction, and as you build on that, yes, I believe I can. The next step is developing those positive habits, because here's another aspect that really trips people up, is the fact that success takes work. It really does. You don't just typically stumble into it, right? You need to put in the work, and good, bad, or otherwise, right? Just understand it's going to take energy. You have to put in that time. So developing positive habits that push you towards, I'm a fitness instructor, right? So I do motivational training, I do personal training. And one of the things I try to teach people is just about consistency, right? I worked with a lot of people who would kind of go through these highs and lows. And I know that's a pretty common struggle. Like, I'm super motivated. I'm going to crank out workouts for the next 3 weeks, and then they disappear for 3 weeks, right? You have to develop those positive habits that drive you towards your goals and stay very consistent with them. And then that final step that I teach, and as I deliver these in my motivational speech, I share stories about how I came to these realizations. It's seeking greatness within yourself. That last step of saying like, okay, if you look all around you, and you're running in the middle of the pack and you look and you say, well, that guy's better than me, he's farther ahead, and that girl's better than me, she's farther ahead than I am. That's not the way that you find that champion within. You seek greatness within yourself. You push yourself to be better tomorrow than you are today, and to be better today than you were yesterday. Maybe that's, maybe you're not the strongest person in the world. Maybe you're not the fastest person in the world. Maybe you're not the smartest or the richest or any of those things. But that doesn't mean that you can't seek that champion within yourself, seek that greatness within yourself. So, those are the steps that I walk people through to dig out the greatest potential that they have.
Right. Yeah, no, and definitely, and I heard you talk about your story, or how you linked all of these different 5 key points to your story, and it's definitely a very empowering message in many different aspects, and I love the background of that. In terms of your day to day, right? What are some challenges that maybe you are facing on a daily basis with your wife, Leanne, and how you guys go about really not allowing any of those challenges, if any, right, to get in the way of, living a very happy, successful life? Because I think that oftentimes, people allow the economy, the condition of the day, the relationships, whatever that might be, getting between in really having a successful, happy life. And I think that if we could be more at peace, more at love, more of that, we can definitely do more for ourselves and the people around us.
Yeah. So my wife, as you had mentioned at the intro, is also visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
We have 4 children. So my oldest, my stepson, is 21. And then my wife and I have 3 girls together. They all live with us. They're 18, 13, and 5 years old. And so we're a very, very busy family. So when you think about like the everyday challenges that you bump into when you're visually impaired, something as simple as grabbing the right spice out of the cupboard, right, can be a little bit challenging. Making some dinner and we need some oregano, and so you're digging through all of them and trying to smell which one smells like oregano, and things like that. Little challenges, right? And there are ways around these. Like I don't want to leave people with the idea that like you can't do that, because you can label things with braille labels and stuff like that, but just functioning throughout the day can be there are just odd little challenges that can kind of come up, right? But I think that for us, being visually impaired has just become a way of life for us. Our kids know that we're visually impaired, and I think a lot of times people have asked our kids, well, what's it like growing up with parents who are visually impaired? And they're like, I don't know, it's normal. Like, to them, it's normal. So all of that to say, like, in a way, you kind of have to normalize your challenges, right? If you always look at your challenge as this like big heavy stone that you're always holding on to, and it's always weighing you down, and like that's going to really affect the way you think, the way you act. But for us, we laugh it off a lot of times. There's challenges like, we're walking through the house and we're both focused on what we're doing. We're not, paying attention. We bump into each other. It's like, oh, found you, like it's funny stuff, right? You just kind of laugh off life sometimes. So approaching it with a little bit of humor and normalizing your challenges also can be a really effective thing. And I think that's how we kind of function in our house. We're not going to let it stop us from being parents, and we're not going to let it stop us from working our jobs and cleaning our house and cooking dinner and all the things that we want to do to have a functional family. So you approach it with some of those different coping mechanisms, and does it take work? Yeah, but you roll forward with it and don't allow it to hold you back.
Right. And I love that. And I love the way you approach that. And one of the messages that I have here from you is that, you have to continue to live your life despite the challenges, and you can be successful at any of those things, right? And that was the point that I was trying to make here, is that at the end of the day, regardless of what that might be and how that is showing up for any of the people that are listening to the show, you got to be able to understand that you too can overcome those challenges. Every game is winnable. You just need to know how to win the game, right? And when you put yourself in terms of that mindset, and in your case, as you say, you make it fun, you make it, let's put some humor into that. You're winning the game, and that game is, we're gonna have the best that we can, and we're gonna continue to stay focused and do what we have to do as we move forward in our journey, right?
Absolutely. And just again, to circle back to the idea of like, if you compare yourself to those around you too much, it's a losing bet, right? You just, again, I'll give you an example, right? Being visually impaired, if I'm going to go out of my office here and I'm going to help my wife clean up the living room, we got a 5-year-old. So, there's toys all over the place, and our teenagers aren't always the biggest help with that. They do help, but
yeah,
they're teenagers, right? So,
right.
For somebody with full vision, they could walk around the living room. Oh, that's out of place. They pick it up, they move it, they put it where it needs to go. I mean, maybe it'll take them 5-10 minutes to clean up. When you're visually impaired, I mean, you're feeling around for the things that are out of place. You're trying, like, it takes quite a bit longer to do that work, right? And so if all I'd ever did was say, oh man, somebody with sight can do this so much faster than me, I'm such a loser, that would be really hard to get through the day if that's all I ever focused on. But what I do is, again, I focus on me, right? And I don't mean that in a selfish way, but I focus on, like, I want to get this done. I'm going to clean my own house. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's going to take me longer, but that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to rely on anybody else because I'm taking full ownership of my life, But there are other things that I do quicker and more efficiently than somebody with vision. I'm a personal trainer, like I said. So for me, fitness is fast and easy compared to a lot of people. So, everybody will have their skill set, and, you can't always compare yourself to the people around you when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. Talking about fitness and talking about your training, what kind of training do you do for yourself to prepare you for the Paralympics?
Oh man. The training that we go through is pretty wild. So, first of all, and when you talk about high-end athletic performance, it gets a little nuts, right? It's actually, the extreme of almost anything is typically not going to be super healthy, right? So
yeah, right.
We beat ourselves up pretty good. Like we do a really good job taking care of ourselves at the same time, but it's intense. We train very hard. And so, the first layer is it's very cyclical, right? So, leading into like the fall, when we weren't really in a heavy season, we did a lot of heavy strength training, right? So we're not on the court very much, but we're lifting a lot of weights and building up a lot of strength and speed. And then we kind of got into our preseason work where we're doing a lot more explosive body weight training, medicine ball throws. We're getting on the court more. So, now we're somewhere around 60 days out from the Paralympic Games. We're on the court 3 times a week, typically 2.5 hours sessions to 3-hour sessions on the court. A lot of skill training. Our strength training is about 2 hours long, but it's a lot lower volume than what we used to do. We'll do a lot of dynamic warm-ups and movements. Again, a lot of power lifts, hang cleans and push presses, overhead walking lunges and things like that, barbell lunges. So our sport really requires a full, well-rounded athlete. It takes a lot of core strength. It takes a lot of flexibility. It takes a lot of balance and coordination. So our training is pretty wild.
Yeah.
A lot of times we burn a lot of energy during our training sessions.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds, and beyond that, it sounds that there's a very good systematic way of disciplined commitment. Yeah. And so maybe even looking at that from that perspective, and I know we kind of touched on that a little bit already. How is that the training that you're doing, the discipline, the commitment? How is that applied to your own personal life, to your business life? Because I think that some of the people that are listening, are entrepreneurs, and I think they can take a lot from that.
Yeah, well, it again, it circles back to discipline for so many things, right? So again, one of the steps that I talk about is developing positive habits. Well, habit is kind of a synonym for that, right? That discipline or consistency, they all kind of tie together. And so, it really makes a difference. So if you're going to train for an event, the consistency and the discipline of applying yourself to continue to progress forward towards that event physically is extremely important. The same principles apply when it comes to your business, when it comes to your nutrition, when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your social life. It's all the same process applied into different areas, right? If I want to be a millionaire someday, I have to save money, right? I have to save money and be very disciplined in how I save it and invest it, right? So it's the exact same concept, which is why I think I enjoyed personal training so much, because of that I kind of have that personality type of being really stubborn in a way, like being very consistent with what I do and habitual with what I do. So you can take those principles and apply them in all those areas of your life. Discipline is a key concept to success. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I definitely love that. Tyler, I have a couple more questions for you before I let you go.
Sure.
The first one is, if people wanted to connect with you, learn more about your fitness, or maybe just more, connect with you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me. I have a Facebook group where I talk about fitness and motivation. It's Revision Training with Tyler Merren, Fitness VIPs is the name of the Facebook group. I have a website, tylermerren.com. It's MERREN. You can email me at tylermerren@gmail.com. Multiple ways you can reach out to me. I have a YouTube channel where I have a lot of fitness described workouts and some motivational speeches posted up there. So that's Revision Training LLC is the name of my YouTube channel. So I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and always looking for opportunities to share my message. Because ultimately, the reason that I got into motivational speaking is, it's kind of a funny story, because I was working as a personal trainer, and one client in particular that I was working with, really good friend of mine, became a good friend of the family. Mm-hmm. I would talk to him about my story and some of the things that I had gone through. And he's like, you really got to share your story with people. This is a really cool thing that you do, and some of the things that you've experienced. And I was always like, yeah, that's a really good idea. I'll get to that. And I kind of, pushed it off to the side. Like, yeah, one of those things I'll get to. I'm busy with other things. But he kept, bugging me about it. And, eventually he said, you know what? Forget it. And he called my wife, right? And he's like, what your husband needs to do? And she said, yeah, you know what? Let's So long story short, is shortly after he called my wife, we started on this journey, right? So, and so I love opportunities to try to work with people and share this message, because I think it's so important. It's given me so many opportunities in life that I'm always looking for ways to pay it forward.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that. I love that. And in terms of talking about opportunities in life, I want to understand your definition of success.
My definition of success: being better tomorrow than I am today, and better today than I was yesterday. I kind of mentioned that earlier, right? So, we're not always born and raised in the same circumstances. Some people come from very poor backgrounds. Some people come from very uneducated backgrounds. Some people are not born with, the greatest physical genetics. You could kind of go down the list and say, like, these are all the reasons that I have these extra challenges. but you're given that base, you're given that start, whatever that start is. And it's your choice whether or not you want to stay put in that situation or whether you want to progress yourself forward each and every day. And so my definition of success is not the trophy or the gold medal or the plaque. Those are great things, right? Those accolades are great things. If becoming the president of the United States someday isn't a success, but to me, that's not the definition of success. The definition of success is, the single mom who gets up every day and gives her kids a healthy breakfast, whole food breakfast, because she's going to do that every day. As tired as she is, she's going to feed her kids properly, and she continues to do that as she is working and building up her finances and getting her life on track, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, the definition of success is pushing yourself forward despite your circumstances and reaching each and every day to progress yourself a little bit further.
I love that. No, that's awesome. Definitely. And I know a lot of people sometimes see it as, that shiny syndrome, and they want to define success by the monetary value that they have or they're working for. And I'm very similar to your thoughts in terms of, I think it's beyond that. I think it's not necessarily monetary value. All of that is a great reward. I think it's beyond more feeling happy at the moment. In the moment that you're living and the things that you're doing and how you're impacting your life and the lives of other people. And definitely your message of trying to, or not only even trying, you're actually doing it. The message of doing and speaking to people and motivating people is definitely one that it needs to be noted for. So that's amazing. Tyler, any other things you want to say before I let you go?
No, I just appreciate the time. Like I said, this is cool for me because I've been given so many blessings in my life that the opportunity to share my story with your audience is really great for me. So I just super appreciate the time, and I hope that somebody listening to this message steps back for a second and they think about something that's been challenging them, and they walk through some of those steps that I mentioned and find that they are capable of overcoming it. Like, not that it'll be easy, not that it won't take a lot of work, but you can be successful each and every day. So I appreciate the time, Cesar.
Yeah, no, definitely, Tyler. I really, really, really thank you for being here. And definitely those 5 key points are something that people need to definitely apply into their lives. And so do me a favor, guys. Please make sure that you follow Tyler, follow him on his social media, check out his website, connect with him, and do me a favor, share this podcast. Somebody needs to hear this message. Please make sure that you subscribe, leave some comments, and I will see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you.
Do you feel stuck? Do you feel like life is against you? Do you feel like you can't get ahead? Well, we have a podcast for you. You can overcome anything with Cesar Espino, real estate investor and real estate coach, NLP practitioner, and author of the book of the same name. Cesar will show you a way to overcome anything in your life through talking with people from all walks of life that have done just that. You Can Overcome Anything podcast available on Spreaker.com.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.